Hi everybody, Carla here. This article was originally published as text on my Medium blog, the link for which you can find in the description of this video. Enjoy! Beyond Enemies, the case for dislike to love in romance tropes. Picture this. You're chatting with someone about romance tropes and they start gushing about enemies to lovers. You nod along, but deep down, you're just not vibing with it. Sure, Darcy and Elizabeth, Gilbert and Anne, they're iconic, but are they really enemies? Not in your book. Ha! Pun intended. That's where the dislike to love label comes into play, though I'm sure someone out there has already come up with a catchier name for it. Before you accuse me of being a genre snob, let me state for the record, I'm not here to gatekeep. If you want to lump every romance where the main characters start out disliking each other into the enemies to lovers category, be my guest. But for me, that is a useless distinction. It doesn't tell me what I'm getting into when I pick up a book. The stories I'm not crazy about, the ones where there's genuine hate or hostility between the leads because of some huge clash in beliefs or values, those I consider true enemies to lovers narratives. And don't get me wrong, there are exceptions to my aversion. Give me a Zutara or a Logan Veronica any day, but those are few and far between. Most of the time, it takes a lot for me to buy into such pairings. This is because more often than not, the initial animosity between the characters is so intense, difference between them so extreme, that resolving them feels impossible. Usually one of them has to do a complete 180 on their beliefs or morals for the romance to work out. And sure, that sounds great on paper. High stakes, high reward. But in my opinion, it often falls flat. The shift feels forced, like the narrative is twisting itself into knots just to make the romance happen. Some people enjoy that, but I'm not one of them. So when I'm looking for a new read, I want to know if it's gonna be one of those hate-fueled, morally antithetical kinds of stories. Dislike, I can handle that and sometimes even enjoy it. But full-blown hate where they're willing to embrace violence or take opposite sides in a war, more often than not, I'll pass. And that is why using the enemies to lovers label for everything doesn't work for me. Even rivals to lovers has a very specific vibe. So let's talk instead about the dislike to love trope. Unlike enemies or rivals to lovers, this one is about two characters who perhaps don't see eye to eye at first, but there's no outright hostility. It's more a little friction, a bit of tension, a lot of misunderstanding. Maybe they clash because their personalities are opposite, or they come from different worlds. Whatever the reason, there's also something there that keeps drawing them back to each other. The transition from dislike to love happens gradually. It's a slower build, marked by small shifts in how they see each other. They start to understand where the other person is coming from, maybe even appreciate their quirks. And as they peel back the layers, they find themselves falling, for real this time. What I like about this trope is that it leaves room for genuine connection. There's no need for big dramatic showdowns or competitions. Characters don't have to reinvent themselves for their feelings to make sense. They're just two people getting to know each other, flaws and all. And when they finally do come together, it feels earned, not forced. But despite all its charm, the dislike to love trope doesn't always get the recognition it deserves. It gets lumped in with the enemies and rivals, or worse, ignored altogether. And that's a shame, because it's got so much potential for rich storytelling and character development. Most of the so-called enemies to lovers stories I'm into, I'd label dislike to love instead. It's a distinction that helps me sort them more easily in my mind. And of course, you don't have to use that label if you don't want to. I'm not trying to start a revolution in the publishing industry. But if you're pitching a book, maybe consider adding a little bit more specificity. You might just snag yourself one more reader. Me. And maybe there are more people out there like me, just waiting for a romance that's a little less enemies and a little more dislike to love. Thank you guys, I'll be back with more medium-sized bites in the near future. And in the meantime, take care and I will see you all in another video from all the way in freaking Narnia. Bye!